I was a massive Queen fan, and it was one of those bands that really wanted to work with. I dreamt about working with them, and I got the opportunity. I got a call from their production manager, who was a big part of their career, asking me if I wanted to design their tour, which ended up being the last tour that Freddie ever did. And they sat me down. It was pretty heavy, and basically told me, you know, you don't want to do this tour. I said, but I've committed. You said it was okay. And they said, no, just trust me. You do not want to do that. All of a sudden the door opens up. In walks Prince.
The Fidelity Exchange. Real conversations for people who take listening seriously.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Fidelity Exchange. I'm Drew Baird, founder of Moon Audio, and today I'm sitting down with one of the most iconic production and lighting designers in the history of live music. His work has shaped what it looks and feels like to be in an arena with some of the greatest artists of the last half century. Prince, Paul McCartney, David Bowie, Queen, Beyoncé, Madonna, The Who, and that's not even close to the full list. He's also, I'm proud to say, a longtime Moon Audio customer and a guy whose ear for how things sound is just as sharp as his eye for how they look. LeRoy Bennett, welcome to the Fidelity Exchange. Really glad to have you.
Oh, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
First, I want to say that I guessed who that was on your shirt instantaneously. For all you Bajas fans out there, that's Peter Murphy. But I want you to take me back to the beginning. Where did the love of music actually start for you?
Started my childhood. Basically, the environment that I grew up with in, my parents were very much into music. My mom was a trained opera singer. So I was surrounded by classical music and opera most of my childhood. I had an older sister that she was into more of the pop music stuff, and that's how I discovered the Beatles and everything else after that. My dad was an interior designer, so I was kind of grew up in a world of music and visuals and creativity, and it obviously had some influence or a lot of influence on me. Also, the neighborhood that I grew up, the first 7 years of my life was basically a private beach community, but we lived there all year round. So I spent a lot of time on my own and had to figure out my own creativity. But I learned very early, I didn't understand at the time, that when I listen to music, I see music, and it can be colors, it can be cinematic things in my head. And I always believed for a long time that's the way everybody, listens to music.
Synesthesia, it's called, right?
Correct.
Which is honestly really cool. I'm actually jealous. I wish I would see color explosions when I listen to music. I mean, I do have a very vivid effect when I'm listening to music that brings back memories, and that's sort of the whole point to, listening is about lots of things. It's about healing, it's about nostalgia. I get when I hear a song that reminds me of something from my childhood or a really cool concert. I mean, the hair on my arms stand up, and I get, goosebumps and chills in the back of my neck. So it's very emotional for me. But to be able to see colors is really cool. And I think you told me a story about, what was it, at the first concert you were at that really cracked this sort of open for you. Tell us about that story.
Well, my father took me to my first live concert, and it was the first time ever going into an arena. It was Three Dog Night was the headliner, and that's who we went to go see. And I remember walking into the arena for the first time, and it was in the, like, 1972, and the arena was smoke filled because you have a smoke in public. There was all these hippie type people with really long hair, older than me. So I had never been around a crowd like that. It was this scent of patchouli, which was the popular scent at the time, in the air. So it was it was kind of like walking into a cathedral. It was just kind of what I would imagine it to be like at that time. And I just remember when the opening acts got on stage, it was a band that I didn't know was going to be there called Uriah Heep, an English rock band. And I had never heard him before. And it was, these skinny, super long haired British dudes and very high vocals. I just remember the feeling of it was uncomfortable, kind of made a little slightly scary, but really intriguing at the same way. It was a really interesting mix of emotions that sat with me forever. And it was that experience of how it was just a total environment of emotions and experiences and experiences that I've carried out through my whole career is that I want people to feel how I felt when I was a young teenager. But with all the shows that are going on now, I mean, there's so many things and so many different productions and stuff. It's still important to me to create that emotional environment instead of being very obvious about things. It's about creating layers and depth. And
So back to the synesthesia. That's a lot of tongue twister there. When did you realize that the experiencing musical, visually wasn't so universal and that everybody didn't see these colors?
when I first started, and also over time, I mean, it was when I was first started basically as a designer with Prince back in 1980, trying to get. It was more like when we did Purple Rain when I had a part of that. I was just all analog stuff. Then the first time I used moving lights was in 1984 on Purple Rain. So then all of a sudden I went from just being running a show on my own. I had another person there. I had to explain exactly what I wanted out of the lights and how I wanted him to program it. And that's when I realized he didn't understand what I was talking about a lot of times. I was like, oh, and he goes, I hear what you're saying, but I understand what it is that you're hearing or seeing um, musically, and it's then it started to trigger off or make me think, oh, maybe that's just him. But there was quite a few people that I've worked with over the years. It would take a lot of explaining to get them to understand
Understand what you were
what
saying. Mhm.
yeah, what I was seeing in my head.
So how did you go from loving music to realizing you could actually work in it and in a way that you do so specifically?
Well, I mean, that first concert was the trigger of I have to be a part of this.
And how old were you then?
I was 14. After that, I mean, I dove deep into music and a lot of esoteric bands, and I never really went for the mainstream very often. I appreciate some stuff, but I mean, as time went over, mainstream got worse and worse and worse. But I learned. I After I graduated from high school, I met a band over the summer that played the club circuit up and down the East Coast. I grew up in Rhode Island. They were originally from Rhode Island, but lived down in DC. So they invited me to come live with them and move their gear. And they had a little lighting system that I ended up taking care of. And what was interesting, just kind of jumping back a bit, everybody in my family, my sisters and my mom and dad they loved performing on stage. I had stage fright. I could not do it. I'd freeze. So what happened with this lighting system is I learned that I could perform musically through lights. I didn't have to be on stage. It was just another way. For me, I learned that's what I was meant to do, is to express visually what music is.
And so about Prince, what do you remember about the moment, first starting to work with him? I mean, were you did you know Prince very well in terms of his music at that point, or was this sort of a new venture? I mean, one of the greatest artists of all time, one of the most creative geniuses of all time, and to give you that incredible break at an early age. I mean, what's sort of a vivid memory from the beginning of that whole process of working with him?
Well, now was before I became a designer, I did work as a technician, and the first tour I was on, actually one of the guitar techs was into him, and I just remember he said, "You got to check this guy out." And it was just a brief moment. I thought, "Wow, he's pretty cool," and then that was it. Until when till I s- worked with a second company and did some tours with them, the the director of the company took me aside and just said, "Hey, do you want to be more than a technician?" And I said, "Yeah, and I want to be a lighting designer." So he said, "The next client that comes through, I'm gonna put your name forward." And he called me about a month or 2 later, and he goes, "I got a client for you. His name is Prince." And it didn't register at that time.
And he wasn't huge yet, right? I mean,
No. No, he was very unknown. And I thought, well, I started to look into who he was, and I thought, wow, he's really intriguing. It's very androgynous, something that, it was kind of the same experience that he represented kind of what that kind of interesting, disturbing, but intriguing type of artist that, it's like, it's kind Bowie was like that in the beginning, and a lot of stuff where you don't really understand who they are or what they are, but it's really fascinating. That's what really got me into it. Meeting him was a very interesting experience.
Oh,
Kid,
I can only imagine.
he was Prince was Prince. He was Prince 24/7, 365, and never changed. He's one of those people because he pushed himself so hard, he expected everybody else to do the same. So he would push you beyond what you imagined you could do. But somehow he must have seen it, or I don't know. But it was just he and I, after the first 5 days of working with him, was it was a I have to say it was a living hell. He would just ask me to do all this stuff, and it's like none of it made sense, but I had to do it, and it was a test to see when I would break, and it was like I went go back to the hotel going, "I know I can do this," and I literally some nights I would just cry. I mean, never in front of him, but just at the hotel going, "I don't know what's going on here." Eventually, Bobby Z, the drummer, came up to me. He saw what was going on. He just put his arms around me and said, "Look, he does this to all of us. You're doing a great job. Don't worry about it." And then his manager showed up a couple of days later, and Stephen Farley, the manager at that time, saw what I was doing, and he told Prince, "Just back off. He's doing a great job." And after that, you know, we became close friends, creative partners for 14 years. I didn't know or understand at the time. I thought it was great and it was really exciting and just playing basically a funky punk rock guy, with his whole unique look and his persona. It was over time I realized what an amazing artist he was. Probably not till way into it because once you start working with somebody like that, that's all you know. So it's not like taking it for granted. It's you don't realize it till you start working with somebody else and go, "Wait a minute."
I often say, like a session artist, right? You can be a good guitar player, but if you become a session artist and you play with all of these different bands, you pick up on all these little skills. And that's sort of the same way here. The more artists that you end up working with, the more creativity you see from different avenues and builds upon, what you can do, right? So, I mean, one of the greatest session artists, Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin, he was a session artist at a young age, and that's how he got so skilled, to be totally honest. So, but I have to ask you a question. There's a story involving Queen and Prince, and specifically Freddie Mercury and Prince. What happened there?
Well, I was a massive Queen fan, and it was one of those bands that really wanted to work with. I dreamt about working with him, and I got the opportunity. I got a call from their production manager, who was a big part of their career, asking me if I wanted to design their tour, which ended up being the last tour that Freddie ever did. And I said, "Of course." And they said, "Well," he said, "the stipulation is you have to go out and run the whole tour." So I said, "Okay, let me go check with management, make sure before we commit to this." And the management said, "Oh, no, no, Prince is in the studio. Don't worry about it. You're fine." So I went back and said, "Okay, let's go. I'm ready." And, and then apparently they told Prince, and he was always like, when I'd go off and work with other artists, he was always kind of like jealous and he's very possessive.
Possessive, yeah.
And I told him, "Look, when I go off and work with other artists, I learn things that I bring back to us and and develop new things." But for some reason, Queen didn't sit so well with him. And so I was still living in Rhode Island at the time, and I think that I mean the reason why I got the job or was asked to do it is because Freddie was a huge Prince fan, so I had to go back. I had to go out to L.A. and have a meeting with the management, and they sat me down. It was pretty heavy, and basically told me, "You know, you don't wanna do this tour." I said, "But I've committed. You said it was okay." And they said, "No, no, just trust me, you do not wanna do that." All of a sudden, the door opens up. In walks Prince, and he looks at me and goes, what's the name of their big hit single? Prince of the Universe, and it is just let out this huge cackle and then stormed out, slammed the door, and I thought, "Okay, here we go." So, I had to, I had to go back to my friend who was the production manager, say, "Look," explained to him the whole thing, and he totally understood the situation, the band understood. So I still ended up designing it, going to rehearsals. It was great, spending time with Freddie, but unfortunately, it was one of the I'd have to say one of the biggest disappointments in my life that I couldn't go out and do that whole tour.
No doubt. I can only imagine. So let's get into your craft. How do you actually describe what you do? Because lighting designer, I don't think really covers the whole gambit.
Well, I started off as the lighting designer because at the time there wasn't really stage sets so much, and it was pretty basic still. But when there was stage sets, they were usually a separate person. There was a set designer and then the lighting designer. But after a couple of years, I started to uh, realize that it was always kind of fighting the stage set. It was to me, it was always like the lighting and the stage set are the same thing. So because a lot of the set designers didn't take the lighting into consideration, they were just designing a set. So I decided to take that role on too as the set designer, which actually, when you do the two things, it's it's a term that it can be confusing. If production designers in a movie set are just set designers, and then there's the gaffer, the lighting director, and cinematographer, where I was doing two people's job, which then in the rock and roll world, production designer kind of takes on that name or persona. I mean, I'd say yes, I was a lighting and set designer until it finally decided it's easy just to say production designer. But I did it because I felt that the sets were needed to have a soul to them instead of this thing. They needed to emit light. The lighting had to come from them as well as being lighting them up. And it was also the way I saw a progression in the dynamics of visually of a show, as well as what the artists were doing dynamically with their set list, is that you try to give something multiple personalities to match the emotion and personality of each song.
And I imagine a lot of designers feel the pressure to sort of fill every moment, but there's a philosophy I think you share that it's actually what you don't do that hits the hardest, silence, darkness, a little bit of restraint. How do you think about that?
I think it's a very important thing. I mean, it's don't I've never been afraid of silhouettes and shadows and backlight and uh, and darkness. Because you need to leave yourself headroom for dynamics. It's that way with sound too. It's just I'm a firm believer in not always being doing the obvious stuff. There's things there's spaces between the beats. Sometimes I used to do stuff and I do still. It's the things that kind of set things off that make the audience kind of more engaged in things. But Prince and I started off uh, quite often in the early days where he was a silhouette and you could hear his voice, but you couldn't see his face or you could see his body. There are times when there was no lights, but you can see him. And it just, if you build a show that way, it gives you places to go. And the thing is, it used to be the theory when I started is like everything on, and it's like it has to be in your face, and it doesn't have to be. It's just the crowd is just happy to be there, and if they know the artist is on stage, they'll go crazy. They don't need lights to make them go crazy. Um, so when they finally do see him, it's like another reveal. So it's kind of building the show that way.
Although I imagine the Nine Inch Nails tour was probably pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, Trent's one of my favorite artists.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Do you have a favorite design from over the years? Is that one of them, or
I would have to say out of all the I mean, all the Nails tours that I did, I mean, they progressively got more technical. The, Tension tour was definitely my favorite one, obviously, just because of the technology at that point, and it helped develop the LED screen that, was used on that tour, the transparent one. It's, it's the use of technology, but still being analog at the same time, and 'cause that trance music's kinda like that, even though it's electronic, there's an analog side to it, or digital and analog. So I like that, the way that that show was built is it started off very compressed, like, the lights overhead lights were just really low, and that creates a lot of attention, which wasn't intentional because of the name of the tour, but it's just this compression of for me, it was like the compression of sound in a visual way.
You mentioned you actually collaborated with audio engineers on mix decisions because of how you hear the music spatially. How does that conversation go?
It can go one of 2 ways. I mean, if they look at me sideways and say, "Mind your own business," or they get it. Fortunately, I've worked with the the top engineers in the world, and they get it, and it's if I'm doing something visually, then particularly the subtle stuff, it's back in the music, but it's the melody and it's the things that the ambience that carries it fills in that space in a lot of music. I do things, it's the very melodic, soft things. I'll be doing something. If I can't hear it, it doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, if I explain that to the engineers, you're just pushing it a little bit more, they get it.
You've been working with Paul McCartney now for over 24 years. What does it feel like to design for an artist whose music is just so incredibly famous?
It's an incredible experience. I mean, he's one of the most I mean, he's obviously right up there in the genius category of and I've been fortunate to work with a lot, quite a few geniuses over the years. He's a very disarming person when you meet him. He's very down to earth, very genuine, and you kind of forget who he is. And it was like that when I first met him, but then there's a moment you go, "Holy crap, that's Paul McCartney." And, and that's the guy. And it's incredible because creating a show with him, it's decades of music. It's the Beatles, it's himself, it's Wings, and what he's doing now, and it's such a vast story to tell. It's musical history for the most part. And so it's creating a show that brings back memories because that show brings back memories more than anything that I've ever done of because of how the Beatles and Paul affected millions and millions and millions of lives and it brings it's important that the visual emphasis brings back that emotional point in time to people, and it's done through video, sometimes lighting. And the other thing is that no matter what I do, it's an enhancement. It's not ever, overpowering anything. It's just an extension of the music. And with him, it's just playing, again, dynamics and keeping things simple when it's supposed to be simple, and then, there's, like, Live and Let Die, which is all hell breaks loose. And every bit of pyro.
Yeah. When I think of Paul McCartney and his set design, I think of Live and Let Die and the pyrotechnics that I've seen used in the videos of the performance. I imagine you had a hand in that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when it's for me, pyro is more the better. I've worked with Rammstein for many years,
Oh,
and so, that band is, I mean, they're amazing to begin with. There's nothing like them, and they're the masters of pyro, uh, and it's like, having worked with them, it's like, that's how I see pyro. It's like, if you're gonna do it, you gotta go in tough, don't and so Paul's that song, "Live and Let Die," there is everything going on. It's chaotic on stage.
I don't know if you ever get a chance to hang out with them outside of all of this stuff, but I wonder if any of these guys are audiophiles and what kind of systems they have. Do you think they get tired of they obviously music is in some ways is a job for them. And do you think they sit back and relax and listen to other people's music when they're at home?
I'm not sure. I know, Prince did. I mean, he would listen to The Clash or Fleetwood Mac, obviously James Brown, Funkadelics, all that stuff. He appreciated a lot of different music. Robert Smith from The Cure, same thing. I don't know what Paul listens to. I know Paul creates music constantly, so he might not have time to listen to music. Um,
Well, maybe you can set me up with a podcast with him.
okay.
A guy's got a dream, right? All right, I know you got some other stories in there. I know I mean, David Bowie, Madonna, there's got to be some really, really exciting stories from some of those people. I mean, talk about other iconic people. I mean, David Bowie being just a real interesting cat, and then Madonna with just her, I mean, you know, dare I say sexiness. I mean, just both, I mean, two very different characters, but gotta be some just amazing stories of what's going on with their shows.
Well, fortunately, I got to work with David Bowie. It originally happened because of when Nine Inch Nails and Bowie toured together.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I have that album, his album that he made at that time. Yeah, it's great.
Oh, the Outside album?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It was
Very different for him.
it's one of my favorite Bowie albums. Because of that, it was a seamless show. It went right from Nine Inch Nails into Bowie, and it was like band members coming and going till all of a sudden you didn't realize that witnessed this transition, and all of a sudden it was just Bowie's band. So there was a kind of a cross section of mixing and cross pollination in the middle of the show. Um, Working with David was incredible. I mean, I was a huge fan forever, and it just for me to work with him was another dream come true. But again, like Paul, he was very disarming, and probably he was such a fun collaborator. He'd give you an idea, and then I'd run off, come back with it, and he'd go, "Yeah, yeah, man, we could do this." And so it was he himself also, like Paul, was an artist, as in, he painted and did all it. He did all sorts of, he was a true artist because Paul does the same thing. He paints, and it was for me a great experience. Unfortunately, I mean that he went on to do his own tour after that, and I had already been committed to something else, so I couldn't go out, couldn't be involved with that. But that brief time, it was amazing. Madonna, on the other hand, very different experience. Uh, um,
Which tour did you do with her?
I did Reinvention, Sticky and Sweet, which is the last one, and the one that's the what do you call it? Confessions on Dance Floor, which is now she's doing part two.
She's gonna be out there when she's like 99. I
Yeah,
swear.
she's not giving up. Live, she's incredible. She works really hard. I mean, the rehearsal oh, yeah. I mean, rehearsals go on for months. I mean, they start with the band and the dance rehearsals. Everything is right up to, there's no room for error ever. But, she puts on a great show. She's very intense. We all know her. I'm sure we all kind of get what her personality is, but I've learned over the years that you can't be intimidated by an artist because if you're intimidated by them, they're going to think you're weak and then they're not going to trust you. So no matter what, how they are at first, just accept them as a human being and an artist and not, you know, don't be thrown off by whatever they say. Yeah, the fame and sarcasm, whatever.
So last time we spoke, you mentioned a new collective. What is it? What made you want to build something different from what you've had before?
Well, it's called Unanimous Lab. Um, we finally decided on the name last week or the week before, or since we've spoken. The reason why lab is two things. I mean, it's
Place
an
to experiment, right?
yes, exactly, but it's also my initials at the same time. So so it kind of works out in in a good way. And unanimous is for a collective is that we all work with the same mindset, the same ethics, the same values of how we do things and how we are open-minded and creative. We deal with our clients in the same manner because that's, I when I have anybody working with me, they are when I'm not there, they're representative of me and how I am and how I deal with things. I'm not into egos or any of that stuff. And there's, we're doing a job for somebody, and it's when egos get in the way, there's always a problem on for many reasons. So I like, humility is a big thing to me. And so I put this collective together. Since COVID, the live entertainment industry has changed drastically. It just seemed like 2 years erased people's brains about what was done before. TikTok didn't help any because all of a sudden over those 2 years, that was live entertainment. And it created all these stars. Some of them were good, some of them were short lived. But because of that, these kids or artists or whatever they are, they gain massive popularity quite quickly. And because of that, they have their friends becoming their managers, their creative people are their friends, and it ends up where they're not qualified or they're not seasoned enough, they don't understand how to put things together, and it unfortunately becomes a big disaster for a lot of, artists financially because they want things that aren't practical or their friends have convinced them to do something. So the collective, which is, they're coming out of COVID, all of a sudden they were collectives. It was like different designers coming together to, I guess, feeling that they were stronger in numbers than by themselves. Um, so my collective is the same people I've been working with. It's my same team. They're all programmers for me, but also designers in their own right. And so I thought, okay, well, we'll become a collective, but not in a way that everybody else is doing it. And I just felt, I'm really excited about. We're all excited about it. I also, not part of the team, are two really super creative choreographers that I met on Ariana Grande. Um, I have a young MIT graduate. She's a Japanese girl that studied computer sciences, but she does a lot of really interesting art installations. So I felt that her knowledge from the world that she comes from, she can help develop things that don't exist with us. Also, we want to take on younger artists, and maybe we can do things that might not be within, we can create things that they don't normally have a budget for, but use it in a very creative way and create things that are different. Because I'm always looking to push the limits of things and technology, but also not replicate myself. Well, once I've done something, it's like it's been done. It's time to move on. Let's figure out something different because every artist deserves their own deluxe, show. And so this collective, um, it's an interesting approach. It's kind of an experiment at first, just to really see um, how it's accepted. So far, the word got out that we were doing this. And now it's going to be official. There was a lot of buzz about it to begin with, just because of my team. They are the top at what they do. Um, I know we have quite a quite a resume between all of us. Um, so it's exciting, and so we'll still. It's like we will do the artists that we work with already. We all because they all have their own clients. But then when we have new ones come in, the younger ones, or the idea is that if we get an artist that comes to us that where we're busy, then one of the people within the collective, we can collaborate and work with an artist instead of just saying, sorry, we're too busy. we can take on more work that we wouldn't normally be able to do if as individuals.
And so it's really twofold, right? I mean, you're trying to work with younger artists that may not be able to afford the crazy production of Nine Inch Nail, but at the same time also train new designers, right?
And well, it's being able to it's that, but also, yeah, we're always welcoming people in. I think as things grow for the collective, we will start bringing in people that, and training people. Um, but for now, it's really about creating really interesting productions that are affordable for young artists. And that's where Corinne, the MIT girl, artist, she'd be, we can collaborate, come up with some really interesting stuff because she's all her installation things are very audio and digital art pieces that they're it's like it's almost as if our computer just exploded in the room and monitors all over the place with wires and all that stuff, but it's all how it interacts is very interesting. So it's kind of using her uh, cutting edge uh,
Technology.
technology and just doing whatever she feels like doing. Uh, but it's always very interesting. But doing stuff that maybe obviously has to be uh, you know, it needs to be able to be moved around and stuff. It's not like an art installation. So it's just using her mind with our mind and really she's the kind of interesting base of the extra element that we all understand technology really well, everybody. But she's the one that kind of rips it all apart. And that's the fun part about it.
And I heard you say vinyl is going to change things, not just as a nostalgia thing, but as a discipline. Why are you so sure?
Um, well, where things are musically right now, it's the music industry. I mean, AI is rapidly destroying, particularly pop music. It's, you know, you've got a lot of, I'm not dissing K-pop at all. It's just that it's becoming so, everything is become so diluted that I mean, it's all everybody looks the same. They're doing the same thing. The production is the same, and it's kind of like instant. It's all instant gratification, and that goes for everything. Same thing with the cell phones. Everything technology is now put the world into instant gratification, and it's terrible. And it's soul destroying. It's creating zombies in a way that you're never satisfied. You're all like ADD. There's no concentration or no appreciation for anything, and it's sad. So for me, there's vinyl, and there's a younger um, generation now that is like starting to become anti tech and Instagram and all of that stuff, and kind of they're discovering in a lot. There's as you know, a lot of now vinyl bars and clubs where, they're playing records, they've got the old warm speakers, everything is, there's tube amps and all of that stuff, and it makes a huge difference when you're listening to something like that, that you go if you've never heard it, go, "Whoa, this sounds completely different," because it's a physical thing. There's I guess, I don't we might have discussed that there's at the record sale, the vinyl market has gone up a
Oh,
lot.
it's exploded, and not just vinyl, but CDs last year doubled over the year before, and I think part of it, like you said, I think kids are getting tired of the constant doom scrolling and instant gratification you're talking about. Like, I was talking to a parent that, her children can't stay on one song and finish the song before they're on to the next song, right? They can't even listen to a complete song or a complete album or anything. And I think the great thing about physical media is it forces you to sort of slow down right? I mean, vinyl is a process. We'll talk about, I mean, vinyl is more of a process than CDs, right? You got to go to the store, buy the vinyl. It's all about, and I think we talked about, the visual aspects are really cool about looking at album artwork on vinyl versus CD. People get pulled more into vinyl because it's so much bigger. So it's much more visual. So you buy the vinyl, you got to take it home, you open it, you check out all the liner notes, all the cool, the cooler the graphics on the album. I almost, in some ways, I look for new artists. If they have good artwork, then they may be artistically really cool sounding, right? So then you get you get it all open. You put it on the turntable. You got to clean the record. You got to drop the arm on it. Then you sit down. You have to listen to 4 or 5 songs. You can't use a remote to change anything. You can't fast forward. You know what I mean? It slows you down. You got to get back up to flip the record, do it all over again. So it's a great way to really slow you down and actually truly listen to the music. And I'll say it, this way, as the artist intended it, right? They've put these songs in a certain order to tell some sort of story that they're thinking about when they're creating this album. And I see CD sales exploding now because I think a lot of the youth are buying like older cars that have CD players in it. They don't necessarily have hi-fi at home, but they're buying these junkers that have CD players in it, right? A lot of cars now don't even come with CD players. Most don't. So I think that's part of the reason they're buying CDs. And I'm seeing all these cool places revitalizing things like boom boxes with cassette tapes in them. And, I'm seeing cassette Walkman, not by Sony, but, other people are bringing back cassette players. I mean, cassettes are coming back into style too. My kids were putting records on their wall before they even had a turntable. They were using it the way I used to use posters in the 70s and 80s, right? And for them, it's vintage, right? It's nostalgic to a different time, and I think that's another thing that's sort of pulling them in is the whole nostalgic feel and vintage thing. So anyway,
Well, yeah, no, no, no. I have exactly the same thoughts. And it's like when you put an album on, it's a commitment, and that's a really important thing for people, is on many ways. Even if you're just learning to commit to an album, maybe it'll start to develop that thing within you that you commit to things. Because there seems like there's a lot of young kids can't commit to things because they're like all over the place, or it's not necessarily it. It's a certain generations that are just like it's this whatever, and it's never enough. It needs to be bigger, better, more expensive. Blah 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 blah. I have it, you don't, but then everybody has the same thing because they're all doing that, chasing that same thing, and it's just vinyl does slow you down. It's just so many positive things about it. I think CDs kind of bridge the gap between albums and where digital things are at the moment. Because I mean, it is a digital format, but it's still a physical thing versus you're owning vapor.
you're owning your music instead of paying. I mean, streaming is almost like paying rent for an apartment. Well, you don't get anything out of the apartment. Buy a house or a condo. It's an investment. Same thing with music. It's an investment.
And I've collected a lot of albums over the years, and I still do because I mean, I don't always play them. But if I'm at drawing on my computer doing designs, I have to I just can't keep getting up, and otherwise I lose my train of thought. But when I'm sitting in my living room, I just love putting on an album and just zoning out.
To bring some music so we can share some new artists with people that they may not be familiar with, or what are you listening to right now?
I brought albums. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, like some old and new. Is that okay? Well, this I love The Cure. Um, uh, well, to me, Robert Smith is one of those geniuses, uh, where he's one of those people that the lyrics and the emotion of the music are together. Because a lot of times, they 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 are totally one thing. Sometimes lyrics and music don't quite mesh together. But Robert Smith, and that Top's a great album. This is uh, Mode Rat. It's a collaboration between 2, electronic artists, Apparat and, Mode Selector, and their stuff is really cool. Um, I mean, they're Apparat I like Apparat more when he's doing his own thing, but as a team, their stuff is awesome. It's also I'm big on collecting box sets too.
Yeah.
So
I love electronics, so I'll definitely check that out. So I brought 2. I brought so Depeche Mode, they just went on their final tour, and so I was a huge Depeche Mode fan, used to mix their music in with house music like crazy, so I pulled out 2 records. Um, this is a live record that was done, Depeche Mode 101, which is probably one of the best recordings of a live show that I've heard. They did a really good job with this. This is an incredible album. These are both original. I bought these in the '80s, so I still have them. And then, of course, Black Celebration, both of these from the '80s. I used to mix the heck out of this one with it went great with house. I mean, it was really sort of, almost gothy in a way. I loved goth music. I got the cool sticker here that says not for resale. I managed to get this from the store that they weren't supposed to sell, but I was like, man, I need 2 copies because I got to mix 2 of them, and they only had one. I said, can I please have that one? So so they sold that one to me. But
well, I'm a big goth head too, obviously. Um, I have this is I like collectible albums. Besides the albums, I like really rare this is the artist, Arca. Do you know much about her?
no, let me. It
A
sounds familiar, but
Arca is binary. Uh, she's produced a bunch of stuff for so many different artists. Really interesting character, but really cool electronic music, and she's quite a character.
oh, yeah, yeah, I've seen her before, but I can't say that I know the music. I just pull up her image. She looks very familiar. Very cool.
This is, Trent Muller. Do you know much about him? He's the Danish artist.
I think we talked about him last time, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I looked him up and I listened to a couple of his YouTube videos. I definitely dig him. Yeah.
No, he's very cool. I actually I did a passion project for him where it's just I like him so much, I just donated my time to
Yeah, yeah.
help out on a tour. Uh, a lot here.
One more. Give us
One
one more.
one more. Okay. I've got so many things here. I didn't know what to choose. Of course, we spoke about this, but you know, this is the Fragile album. And I mean, sonically, his music's incredible. It's just again, it's just this album and a lot of his albums. It's just they're cinematic, they're deep, they're beautiful, they're harsh. There's his music expresses all sorts of levels. This album actually, when during COVID, living downtown LA, I had to, you couldn't go outside or blah blah blah. So the whole city was downtown was empty. I've never seen it like that before. I put my headphones on and played that album, just walking down the middle of the street, all over, just like there was nobody. It was like I only maybe saw 2 homeless people, but there's like it was a ghost town, and it was the most amazing experience of just listening to that album. I told Trent, I said, I walked around.
That'd be a great music video. Just the music and you walking around the desolate city.
It was wild. It was like apocalyptic. Anyway, there's a lot more, but you and I kind of the same when it comes to music,
Oh, definitely.
electronic music and stuff. So, and it's funny because not funny, but it's interesting. You held up Depeche Mode records, and last night and today, I've been listening to all my favorite Depeche Mode albums. Also, but I've added in some other songs on the playlist that, my friend Robert Alphonse, I think I told you about him too, which is, Trust or TR/ST,
Mhm. Yep.
and also, Recoil, which is, Alan Wilder's project after he left Depeche Mode. He was definitely for me, I mean, I still love Depeche Mode, but when he was in the band, it just seemed some of the greatest songs written because, you know, he's a very talented dude.
All right, last question. If somebody's watching this who just stumbled upon this video and has never heard your name, what's the one thing you want them to walk away understanding about the amazing work you do?
Um, for me, it's all passionate. Yeah, as we've discussed, it's, music is a very emotional thing to me, like you. My hair stand up on my arms. Um, it's how I want or hopefully make people feel the same or have those same experiences. But my career has just been passion, patience. It's things don't always happen in the time frame that you think they're going to happen in your life. And that's why, if you believe in something and you put it out there, it'll eventually happen. You just have to be patient. Being a good listener, which is very important with my job, is I have to listen and filter with a lot of artists. Um, it's there's so many different layers to what I do, but I love it. It's I don't l- look at it as work. It's just an extension of my life. I don't. I mean, I imagine if I didn't do this, I have to find a job. I could do something else. But it's like uh, I've I've helped develop so much in this industry over the years, as far as technology and how shows are created, and it's just been an amazing experience so far. Because of all the artists that I've worked with, they're so diverse that for me it was going into an artist that I wouldn't normally work with, you like somebody with like Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, but then adding my edge to it, but still keeping it their show. And it goes that way with everybody. It's always added my twist, but it's not obvious. But I do believe music is a very important thing to us, all of us, whether we realize it or not, because the vibrations resonate with our own. We are nothing but soul. We are physical, but how we function is all electrical charges, and we're energy. And how those frequencies interact with our energy that's why the hair stand up on our arms. I just think music is also healing. And I think it's important that, where music is right now is not very healing when it comes to the pop world. I mean, there are still other, they're just not popular. They're not the cotton candy. They're things of substance, and I do think it's important that we explore, different things, and what it's also musical history because it seems like, and it goes for a lot of things in these days, is that people, younger people don't want to know about history, and that's not good because you have to understand how things got to where they are. And if they're good things that happened, you need to understand how that happened. Music now is derivative. It's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, but you want to know what the original thing was that inspired. It's really important to understand musical history. It's important just to understand history itself because if you understand it, you can help prevent things that need to not happen. So I think that I think people are starting to understand the importance of knowing history. You know, it it's can feel like it's a headache at first, but once you get into it, it's really interesting once you start to understand the journey. And I think that's what's great about music is, listen to classical music at times, or even just soundtracks that involve classical music. Electronic music is so heavily influenced by classical music. Um, it's even rock, you know, rock bands had a lot of classical influences in it. It's, jazz, all that stuff. To me, good music is good music. It doesn't matter what it is. And, I appreciate all forms of great music. I mean, I obviously lean heavily into the more gothy, um, electronic side of stuff, but, you know, if a really good jazz song comes on, it vibrates, it resonates with me. So, I just think it's important that, you know, we keep our eyes and our minds and our hearts open to things, and, music is a really good way to do that because it affects our daily lives, it affects our moods, and, it's the more people listen to music, the better the world becomes.
I'm with you. Well, Leroy, this is everything I hoped it would be, and then some. Thank you so much. Yeah,
You're more than
yeah,
welcome, it's
I
just
love it.
fun.
I love storytelling, and this is, any storytelling revolving around the musical world is just an A plus for me. So for everyone watching, links to Leroy's work and the new collective are going to be in the description below. Go look at what this man has built. If this conversation moved you at all, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming. We've got a lot more of these in the pipeline with people who are doing something real in the world of music. Leroy, thanks again,
Uh,
and we'll see you next time on the Fidelity Exchange.
Absolutely.